Today on Filmmaking for Noobs, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to make your shots look more cinematic. So let's assume that you're using a DSLR, a mirrorless, or other similar prosumer camera, and the real question is, how do I make my shots look less like this and more like this, without spending a lot of extra money? There's a lot to be said about which camera you're using, the size of the sensor, the lens, the aperture, the lighting package you have available, and many other factors. There's also a lot to be said about hiring a professional crew and spending millions of dollars. Of course, it's easy to make your shot look good when you have 100 people on your crew and a big budget. But how do you make your short films, your student projects, and your other low-budget endeavors look better with the limited resources that you have? Keeping in mind that these tips are not always ideal in every situation, but are merely suggestions that you can try to help improve your shot when you're looking for that cinematic edge. We're going to look at a few different scenarios, but let's start with this shot. We're going to start with our model in my living room with no lights on. And although this is a decently composed shot and not something like this, it's still not a very interesting shot, nor does it look very cinematic. Right now, behind our subject is a bare wall, and it looks gross. In this shot, we have rotated the couch by about 90 degrees to give us something much more interesting behind us. Don't be afraid to ask the owner of the location if you can move things around as long as you put them back. The next step is adding practical lights. These are lights that are seen in the shot that make practical sense for where light may be coming from. In my opinion, having lots of blurry, cool blinking things in the background is also a bonus. The next step in making your shots look great is by properly lighting your shots. This includes the use of a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Of course, I'll talk more in depth about lighting some other time, but for now, let's just say that it is extremely important to properly light your shot. The next factor is our lens. Right now we are shooting with an f-stop or an aperture of 5.6. Opening up our aperture to something like f1.8 is going to give us a much more appealing and cinematic looking shot. The wider your aperture and the longer your lens, the more shallow your depth of focus is going to be. You'll notice that not only do we have a much shallower depth of field where our background is out of focus, but even though our actor's eyes are sharp and in focus as they should be, the rest of our actor is much softer. This gives us a much more cinematic look. The next step is adding some lights outside shining in the windows. You'll also notice that I've slanted the blinds in the background in such a way to allow the light to create shadows up against the cupboards. The next thing we'll do is add some atmosphere. This is also known as fog, smoke, haze, whatever you want to call it. And although some haze machines can be pretty expensive, you can also find cheap $50 fog machines that will do the trick. However, make sure that you use a fan to keep the fog even throughout your set, because if you have too much fog floating around, it doesn't look very good at all, because that gives away the fact that you've added haze and it no longer has that cool cinematic feel. Up until this point, we have been shooting with Canon's standard color profile on the 5D Mark II. We're going to switch to the C-Log color profile, which I downloaded online. When I go in and color grade our shot, it's starting to look way better. I will talk much more in depth about C-Log, color grading, and all those other things in future episodes. If we take it a step farther, we can crop our image to the 2.35:1 ratio, which also gives us a much more cinematic look. At the very beginning, we added practical lights. And to give you an idea of how important these are in making your shots look great, here is our exact same shot, exact same settings, only lacking practical light. You can see between these two shots that practical lights make a huge difference in making your shot look mediocre or great. Matt and I set out to try these techniques in the field and see if they really work. We brought in one actor, We only used very cheap equipment that I already owned and had access to, and we endeavored to see how great we can make a shot look using these techniques and tips without spending any money. We started with no lighting with a standard color profile. We then opened up our aperture to f2. We switched to the C-Log color profile. We added some practical flames in the background and the foreground. We added a heavily diffused key light. We added a small HMI light. We added a soft daylight fill light. After applying some color correction and then cropping to the 2.35:1 aspect ratio, this is our end result. But one thing that really makes shots look cinematic is motion, and good motion. We will apply these same techniques to one more shot. Starting with no lighting in the standard color profile, we then add a key light, we switch to the C-Log color profile, we open up our aperture to 1.8, we add some practical light, we add a daylight balance light outside the window nearest camera, we add a tungsten light outside the window farthest from camera, we add a little bit of fog, and then we color correct the image, crop to 2.35:1 aspect ratio, and suddenly our mediocre shot goes from this to this, which is much more cinematic. But there's a number of things that can be done before you even arrive on set that can improve the overall cinematic quality of your film. Finding larger locations, which gives you lots of depth in the background, can provide you a lot more scope and make your shots look much better on camera. Having something interesting in the background is also much better than having your actor up against bare walls. For example, this shot right now looks a whole lot better than this shot. Don't place your actors right up against the wall, make sure there's lots of action going on behind them. Using large interior locations as well as exterior locations will give you lots of opportunities to use longer lenses and place your camera farther from your subject. First of all, here am I standing inside of a storage facility. You can see the difference that it makes when we simply color correct the image. However, if we reframed our shot and used a longer lens, and then crop to the 2.35:1 aspect ratio, you can see that those few things make a huge difference. Properly lighting your shot does not always mean lots of light. I hope these tips will help you explore your creative side and find new and better ways to get more cinematic looking shots in your projects. Thanks for watching Filmmaking for Noobs. I'm Kyle Lawrence. New episodes every other Saturday. See you later. Thank you for watching Filmmaking for Noobs. If you liked what you saw, then please let me know by clicking that little like button. If you'd like to see more, then please subscribe to my channel by clicking my face right there. You can check out other videos here and here, or if there's anything else that you'd like me to cover in a future episode, then please leave a comment below. Until next time, keep it rolling.